Hello, and happy Women in Horror Month. This is episode 9 of Your Creepiest Corner, and I'm your host, as per usual, Ariel Hansen, but today I have with me...
Sharai Rewels.
And so, Sharai, can you tell us what you do within the world of horror?
Sure, yes. I started as an actress doing short films, usually for the Heavy Hitting Horrorfest in Whistler. And I actually got scouted and started with an agency, and that led to writing and directing my own movies.
Oh, can you maybe tell me more about the films you've created yourself?
So far I've done 7 short films. A few of them have been horror, including my latest, Ramshackle Blues, which is kind of a honky-tonk romance with 2 killers on the run from the law. Lots of gore, pretty cheesy, not very scary, but yeah, I like that. I really like 80s practical effects, lots of fake blood.
And what are some acting roles that you've really been excited to have done?
Well, one of my shining glories was in a movie called Panicio, and it was about a puppet whose member grew when someone lied, and he would use it to murder people. So I was a murder victim in that.
Oh.
Yeah, that one didn't make it onto IMDb.
Now, our lighting today is a little inspired by a project I believe you worked on recently.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about Reptile House?
I was lucky enough to be the lead actress for Tristan Risk's Reptile House, which we filmed here in Vancouver, BC, and I get to be a snake lady. I think that's all I can say without spoiling the surprise.
So instead of cats, you collect snakes.
I have some snakes, yes. There's snakes involved, and hence the name. But yeah, Tristan was so good to work with. Yeah, she's so lovely. The snakes were quite nice. No bites.
So now, what drew you into horror specifically, and what made you fall in love with it?
Funny enough, I actually had really bad nightmares when I was a kid, and my parents would slow down the scary parts in the movies and try to explain how they created that element that was creating the fear for me, and saying it's just a movie. Like, look at this is like say the black wolf when he jumps out in Neverending Story. You know, I was really little and that was a bit of a scary moment for me, but they'd slow it down and say, look, it's a puppet, and I became really fascinated with the fact that these movies could have the power over my emotions, and horror in particular, to kind of break down the catharsis, I guess, that would cause that emotion. And how do you know, I've done a lot of research to find what actually scares people, and although my movies so far aren't really that scary, they're more in the gory, cheesy, funny realm so far, I would love to make a really scary movie because I think that it's an art.
Yes. What are some things that inspire you in your work?
So I get really inspired just by music and people and places that I visit. So a day-to-day life, I'm constantly seeing like a cinematic side to life. But I like to kind of blow that out of proportion, and I think I'm really drawn to like almost caricature in genre. So there's a lot of real life horrific things. Humans have the capacity to just be so awful and terrible and evil, and somehow I find making it into a movie makes it seem better or seem okay, or you know, you can laugh and scream and kind of like let go of some of the nastiness that actually real life holds for us. Does that make sense?
So, seeing as it's Women in Horror Month, are there any women in horror who you look up to?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Tristan, obviously, as I just worked with her, she's fantastic. Great actress as well. I'm currently in pre-production with a short film that's based on Near Dark, which was directed by Catherine Bigelow.
Oh.
Yeah, great movie, 80s, lots of synth, lots of smoke.
Yeah.
Vampire movie. But locally, I really look up to the Soska twins. They started with Dead Hooker in a Trunk, which they basically self-financed, and moved on to American Mary, which Tristan Risk was in, which was a great movie. kind of a cult classic, and they have just recently released the David Cronenberg Rabid remake, which I haven't seen yet, but looks amazing.
Definitely have to check that one out.
Yeah. So I think I've been following them as inspiration to what can be achieved in the indie genre realm.
Yeah. So a lot of people have hobbies, like some people knit, some people bake, some people travel to all sorts of strange places. Do you have any hobbies that people might consider spooky?
Well, I do tend to collect witchy paraphernalia, like skulls and smudges and herbs and plants and crystals and all sorts of things that you could potentially do rituals with.
Do you have any fun stories from being on set?
Tons.
Top two.
Okay, so my most recent film, Ramshackle Blues, there was one point where on our biggest day, our biggest blood day, like everything was going together really well, and I had one of the extras come up to me and take me aside and say, I just saw the lead actor fall off his chair, because he'd been having a few drinks on set to relax himself. And in that moment I said, that's perfectly normal, totally fine, yeah, don't worry about it, he does that all the time. And then I booked it over, brought him outside, gave him a talking to. Yeah, but I think especially in our like indie realm, there can be more of a looser atmosphere.
Yeah.
And we always used to try to work Jack Daniels into our scripts when we were younger, and it was like kind of a badge of honor to make sure that it was real Jack Daniels. We weren't like putting iced tea in the bottles or anything. So there was one moment on set as an actress where I got to smash a Jack Daniels bottle on someone. So we had them made out of sugar glass, obviously. And we only had a couple because it's indies, so you have to really get it right. So we were lining it up, and the girl was my friend, and I was so terrified, and I have to tell you, the moment that smashed, it made like the most awful sound. I thought I broke her jaw, and I could not let go of the feeling that I hurt her. And even though she was in front of me saying, it's fine, I'm fine, I was like, oh my God, I've broken your jaw. This is awful. I was shaking for like 20 minutes afterwards.
I guess they wouldn't really need Foley for that shot.
No, it sounded awful. There's a lot of good moments. I mean, there's definitely one time I was, as an actress, severing a head off of a barbarian in a film called Cockna and the Barbarian that my late friend Chili Tom was making. And he had decided to use for his blood a mixture of stale tomato, I think tomato juice and coffee. Oh. And it was disgusting, as you would imagine.
Yeah.
And he shot it with the blood pump directly into my face and up my nose. And so for, I think, the rest of the day, I was like blowing my nose, and there was ketchup and coffee and things coming out of my face. Yeah. Lots of great moments.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So you mentioned the Heavy Hitting Horrorfest and that you've worked a lot on projects for that. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Sure, yeah. I believe it started about 15 years ago. The founders were the Heavy Hitting crew, Feet Banks, Chili Tom, Stu Mackay-Smith, and they just got all their friends together and started making horror movies and decided to make a festival so they could show their movies to their friends. And Travi Tetro, I can't forget him too, my big brother. So these guys are really the inspiration for me becoming a filmmaker, and I started acting just out of fun. I always wanted to be involved with movies since I was a little kid. Yeah. And so I said, pick me, you can put me in, douse me in fake blood, like I'll take my top off, like I'll do whatever, just put me in your movie. And of course they needed that. So I think I started maybe on year 12 with them and have been with the festival ever since in different aspects, usually as an actress for many years, and then I started making my own movies, of course, as a writer-director. And it holds a special place in my heart because I don't think I would have easily come into this career if it weren't for seeing what people could do with almost nothing, and like they were so run and gun. Like like I said, they had tons of Jack Daniels. Usually they're making up the script as they went along. Like, I didn't know if there was a hope in hell there would actually be a movie at the end of the day. But they ended up being great. And it started when in its inception, it was actually called the B grade Horrorfest. Yeah. But they had to change it to Heavy Hitting Horrorfest years later because the movies became so A grade. They couldn't really call it B grade anymore. So we're shooting with red cams, and Whistler being a tinier town, you end up being a medium-sized fish pretty quickly once you start working in that community. And so it was so great to have that support and applause. And I think they had like 1,500 people at their screenings. All was the day before Halloween. Yeah.
The Devil's Night.
Devil's Night. Yeah.
What else is next for Sharai?
So right now I'm writing a few features, pitching a docuseries. I have a short film in pre-production that I mentioned. It's called Trunk. It's a vampire story, kind of 80s Lost Boys, Near Dark feel. So I'm excited about that one, but I'm really looking forward to branching into features in the next year or two. Just looking for financing for the projects.
Very cool. So, if people want to follow your endeavors further, where can they find you on the interwebs?
They can find me at SharaiRewels.com, my website, or my Instagram is The Last Unitard.
All right. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much for coming on, and thank you for watching. And again, have a happy Women in Horror Month.
Stay bloody, amigos.
Easy there, Cyclops.
Oh, fuck you, man. Oh. Well, goddamn. That ain't the most fucked up shit I heard all week.
You're going to hell,
Fucking excuse me?